How does one explain the lack of results for both Florida and Florida State on the recruiting trail?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles and a crossover with Locked On Gators. I am Brian Smith, your host today. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am happy to have you in, and here in just a minute, we're going to be talking with Brandon. But first, we are brought to you by Monarch Money. Today's show is also about taking control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So we're going to be talking about Florida and Florida State. They haven't done as well inside the state borders. Both of the coaches are a bit of hot seat candidates, you might say. And there are some other questions as well about specific recruits. How do they get out of this hole? And to help me kind of figure that out as we go through a ton of official visitors and all the things that are recruiting as it's getting underway is Brandon Olsen over here, Locked On Gators. Brandon, you guys just got your second commitment. And don't get me started. I'm just going to start with, I'll start with this. This is something I say to you all the time when I come on your show. It is almost impossible to screw up recruiting to Florida. But the Florida Gators staff, they've accomplished that. That is really hard to do. Florida is a top 5 job in college football. Congratulations on having 2 commitments on May 19th. But we'll get into the who, what, when, where, and why, both of our takes. I'm going to ask you some questions. Believe me, I'm going to pile on Florida State heavy. I am not afraid. I am not afraid. For all you Gator haters out there, fire away, because Florida State's coming off 2-10. I don't care. I'm just here to kind of expose the truth. So, Brandon, how you doing, man? You doing good?
Oh, wonderful. That was such a pleasant intro. How could I not be fantastic after that one?
Well, I mean, I'm a realist. I'm not somebody that's here to sugarcoat it, bro. It is amazing to me how badly Florida and Florida State have screwed up their programs in just a really short period of time. In my lifetime, it's the worst either program has screwed it up. And it's at the same time. That's hard. That is really, really hard. So, first question, I'm just going to let you attack this however you want. This is the big one. How do you have 2 commitments and it be May 19th and you're the Florida Gators?
Well, Florida started recruiting the 2026 class with a bunch of kids that were fickle. I don't think that's a bad thing to say. They're fickle. You know, a couple of the kids that have left the class are on their 3rd commit. There's one that left the class that's on his 5th commitment. And I'm willing to put money down. If you're watching, if you're listening, I'm willing to put money down that there's going to be at least a 6th, that there's going to be at least a 6th commitment there, because it is still junior year and 5 commits is a lot. I do think that some of this is pretty expected for Florida. Obviously 2 is not expected, but the fact that there are a lot of kids who haven't committed to Florida is not surprising to me at all. I mean, we talked about this. This is the 3rd recruiting cycle that we're talking about. Well, kids need to see product on the field. We saw with Jameer Grimsley in the 2024 class saying, hey, don't know if Billy Napier is going to be my coach here for long, so I'm not going to commit. And then, of course, he went to Alabama. Nick Saban retired, and he came to Florida. And that was the 2024 class that we heard that. 2025 class, dead in the water until Scott Strickland put out that statement that, hey, we're keeping Billy Napier past this season. And when that statement came out, recruits started flowing in. Florida ended up finishing with a top 7 class, which I think is the biggest indictment possible of modern recruiting, that Florida was in the 70s in November recruiting, and then signing day wrapped up and they finished 7th. And so I think that that's the biggest indictment possible about how slow burn all recruiting is right now. So having 2 commits is not great. It's obviously not preferred. It's not good. It's not any adjective you want to use that's positive. It's not that. But it's also one of those things where I do think that Florida will eventually clean up. You know, I'm a big fan of the whopping 2 commits they have. I am a big fan of both of them. It's just about adding more quantity here. And I do think that this coaching staff, no matter how many commits they get or don't get, I do think this coaching staff generally brings in quality players. And so right now it's just about filling out the rest of this class and building a base there. It's not one that I'm concerned about right now. Like if we get to even July 14th is the second Saturday in July. If we get to there and Florida's not 8 to 12, then I'll be absolutely concerned about the number of people in the class. But based on how there's a lot of kids right now that are, July 5th, there's 3 kids that were on campus this weekend for Florida that have July 5th commitment dates. And Florida's not pushing you to commit early. They're not going to do it. So that's another reason why I don't get too concerned about it, because I'm positive that there are, silent commits right now for Florida, but this coaching staff isn't pushing kids. They don't pressure kids like that. So that's why for me, I don't like it. I would push kids, and I'd be more aggressive with some of this recruiting tactics, but this is how Florida operates right now. And I think for a lot of us, as in a lot of Florida Gators fans, we're just kind of accepting that whether or not we agree with it, it's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about with Florida State. They've gotten a much better staff since they shook it up after Norvell canned a few guys that needed to go, et cetera, et cetera.
Why did he get rid of a bunch of people? What happened?
I think they were 2-10. I think that's what it was.
Oh, I thought they were unconquered just the year prior. I didn't think that it was. I thought they were going to make everybody pay for leaving them out of the college football playoff.
Yeah, they made everybody pay by watching their games, because I had to do that. But no, it was just something they had to do, and I think he was forced to do it. That's my opinion, because most coaches, they don't like change much. But they probably said, either you do this or we're going to do this.
Can we be honest for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't have done it. I would have been like, go ahead, pay me the insane buyout money that you owe me. I'm not going to do it. Go ahead, get rid of me. I dare you.
That's maybe it's something else, because like they don't want to pay that. That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But like I think they were either going to let him do it or they were going to do it their way, and it might have been uglier. There's another way to put it. So whatever the case, they hired some good coaches. The guys that Tony White and those they brought up from Nebraska, they were good. The Malzahn hire I'm a little iffy about, but they still have 9 commitments. That's better than what I thought it was going to be. They've been there for a little bit. So my question for Florida State, kind of like with you, is it's not necessarily the number, like who are they going to get? Are they going to meet all their needs? Like they got to get better high school offensive line recruiting. They got a lot of guys visiting that fit that, but I still need to see it. And I think it's the same boat with UF. A lot of these kids, you can't see the season until later, and the visits happen first. So there's a big leap of faith for both UF and Florida State. So we'll see. Okay. Now I'm sure you've looked at this. I know I just did. UF's OB list overall, just quick thoughts. Do you like it? Where does it stand? Does it meet needs? However you want to attack that. I personally think UF's visit list is pretty darn good.
Yeah, I'm loving it. And I love that there are certain players on the list that you can recognize for Florida as they are here because of one of the assistant coach hires this past cycle. And I think that's huge for Florida. I mean, you and I were talking off air about Jameer Perez, who just recently committed to Florida. And he was someone that David Reese, former Florida Gators linebacker, who is now on the coaching staff, that was his evaluation from his last spot. That was his recruitment, his relationship. And they got Jameer Perez on campus because of him. And look, Gerald Chapman likes his game. Gerald Chapman, from what I've been told, is a big fan of Jameer Perez. But the way that Jameer Perez got identified was because of David Reese. And so you see that. Braylon Womack, who's on campus for May 30th. Vinny Senseri has a great relationship with him. And so I do like seeing that there are quite a few of these players who have now become kind of intertwined with some of these assistants. Russ Callaway, who tight ends coach, now also the offensive coordinator, dropped the co-title firmly or personally. I believe he's going to be the play caller by the time we get to the fall. Which thank God for that one, if that's true. But Kent and Russ Callaway have a great relationship. They've been constantly in contact. It's fun for me, at least, to see those personal connections. I feel like be more publicized than they've ever been. And Florida, look, they know how to evaluate. Well, you could say what you want about the on-field coaching and anything like that, but these guys know how to evaluate, and they've got a lot of players on this visit list that, honestly, a lot of them are going to become Florida Gators. I'm not too concerned about that. It's just a matter of when for a good deal of them instead of if.
Yeah, I can take that. I can get that. For Florida State, they've got a good visit list. I still don't know if they have enough high-end guys that they've got a great shot at. But again, it's like, you were just joking about it. They're 2-10. So they got to, they've done a better job than I thought they would get this OB list. So I'm at least mediocre on it. It's a pretty good list. It's a starting list, but I thought it was going to be worse than this. So I really can't complain all that much. It's kind of is what it is. We come back. We have some, yeah, that's what I mean. Like we have some more key questions to ask. I'm going to put Brandon on the hot seat. Best bets for UF commitments. Because when they don't get them, everybody gets to make fun of Brandon. It's a fun thing I like to do. But that's right next after this on this crossover, Locked On Gators and Locked On Seminoles.
The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments like the Knicks bouncing the Celtics out. Beautiful. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have way more than ever to play smart and win big. WNBA, by the way, fantastic for betting. Just going to throw that one out. Just going to throw that out there for my fellow degenerates, which if you are a degenerate, you already know, right? You know. If you're new to FanDuel and you're not a degenerate yet, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, back here on this crossover edition of Locked On Seminoles and Locked On Gators. Brandon Olsen, your best bet or bets, however you want to attack it, for UF commitments based on the list that you have. And it's free and available for everybody. You want to check 24/7 or wherever. Who you got, man? Who's the most likely for the Gators?
I think that Kent is one of those that we're going to talk about.
Good player.
Yeah, I think that Russ Callaway has been pushing hard, and I think that Florida is going to I do think that it might not be a commitment that we get to Florida until maybe the season comes around, just to, proof of concept that I think Florida needs to show with a lot of players at this point. There's going to be guys who say, hey, I don't want to play in this kind of offense. I don't want to play in that kind of offense. And I think that Florida, I've said before, again, I'm operating under the assumption that I'm going to put my faith in, which is a crazy thing to say. I'm going to put my faith in Billy Napier here to give up play calling duties to Russ Callaway. That's why I'm going to say I'm putting my faith in him to take a step back there.
Okay.
And if he gives that up, then I think that Florida becomes a lot more enticing if you're an offensive player. So I think that Kent's one. Vadi Cleveland, Valdon Sone on the defensive line, I think is someone that they're really pushing for. We got
Virginia. Yeah, D1.
Yeah, yep. I think he's going to be. I feel like Florida has done a fantastic job of building a little bit of a pipeline just internationally. They've gone with PPI recruits a lot, and Valdon Sone originally from Sweden, moved over to play football and prioritize it. And so I think that that's going to be part of that recruitment. I don't know if Carson Baker is going to commit to Florida, but from what I've been told, they felt really good about the way that the visit went this past weekend. And I feel like if you're a running back, Florida's a really easy sell.
They run it a lot. Yeah, man.
They run it a lot. The young guys get the rock a lot. And you look at after this year, Jacoby Jackson going to be going to the NFL. You look at after this year, you're probably going to lose at least one back to the portal. You brought in 3 this cycle, 2 last cycle. You've still got Trayon Webb over there. And he'd be eligible to leave as a grad transfer at any point if he wants to. So that's not going to be a big problem for him. So I'm looking at one's probably going to hit the portal. I think Florida should look for 2 backs in this class because of that attrition incoming. And Jaden Ball will be entering his draft eligibility after this season. He'll have 1 more year, and then he's draft eligible. So I do think that running backs an easy sell, and Carson Baker, damn good back. I mean, I was talking about this on Monday's show of Locked On Gators of Carson Baker is a running back that runs the same 100-meter time as Aiden Mizell. And I think that for
he's fast, man.
I think for Florida fans that we love that speed at receiver, having that speed in the running back room is pretty damn good as well there. I don't know about Calvin Russell being a commit, but I know they feel pretty good about how that went. Javari Lucas is going to be another commit or another recruit on that May 30th weekend that I think Florida will be good about. I think that we're going to do this thing that we do all the time with Billy Napier and the Florida Gators is you're going to have a lot of these big Vista weekends, and they're kind of quiet-ish. And then we'll have that week where during the season or late in the cycle, we'll go back and we'll say, hey, you look at this May visit weekend, and most of them committed. And I think that we're going to see that happen with the May 16th and May 30th weeks.
Well, for Florida State, they've got a pretty good list. They got a lot of kids from Georgia and Florida, but I just I'm very skeptical they're going to be able to get they got Samuel Roseborough from Clearwater High School. Love him, big time offensive lineman. Are they going to get these kids to commit? Which guys are they going to get? I keep hearing things about different guys, but do I believe them? I don't know. They've got a ton of guys. I'm looking at the list right now. I could see several. Aaron Thomas might be the most likely. He's got ties to Florida State. Ironically, he's from Arizona. But I'm a little concerned if they don't get a few commitments by early June from the May 30th weekend. It's a nice weekend. They got, a bunch of guys coming in. And they got guys from California like Madden Williams, one of the better receivers in the country coming in. That's great. And they need receivers very badly in this class. But I need to see it. And I'm kind of guessing you feel the same about UF. It's one thing to have them come in. Again, it's not hard to sell Florida. It's not hard to sell Florida State. It's, got a lot of tradition. But we'll see what happens there. What's the biggest position need? If you could only pick one for Florida, it would be
offensive line.
Same with Florida State. Okay.
The thing that I've been bitching about for 3 years on Locked On Gators, I'm still bitching about it because they haven't changed that. And so I'm still going to keep saying offensive, which I will say I'm not a big, at least you got a hat on the table kind of guy. But Florida is genuinely in it for more of the top name offensive linemen than they've been in. I mean, getting Felix Ojo on campus at all.
He's a dude, man. He'd be a plug-and-play starter for Florida, 100%.
I was talking about that on I forgot, I think it was last week on Locked On Gators when I was talking about the visit weekend coming up. I was like, the fact that I'm even budging on because you and I feel very similar about, hey, true freshman offensive lineman, not a fan of it. But the fact that I'm even willing to budge on that was how I described to my my listeners of how bought in I am on Felix Ojo. The fact that I'm just like, hey, I'm open to the conversation of him coming in and playing right away. I think that's just a testament to how damn good he is of an offensive tackle. So just getting him on, I'd put full court press. If I'm Billy, I'm like, hey, I'll take money from my own salary and give it to you if I got to get you on this team just because I think he's a dude. And I'm a huge fan of what Florida is doing developmentally right now on the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Florida State's got a bunch of guys coming in that are good visits on the offensive line. They've got some decent defensive linemen and linebackers, et cetera, et cetera. I still need to see it. But just like you, it's offensive line. And across the board, it's that spot for Florida State. It's been the better part of a decade. They've had Walter Jones there and Brett Williams and different guys that were just great players. Like Walter Jones, one of the best offensive line last 3 years in the NFL. And they can't get offensive line. How is that possible? It's unbelievable. But they did change staff. Herb Hans's a good coach. We'll see what happens. What is your biggest immediate recruiting concern for the Florida Gators?
I think that they need to bring in a good bit of corners.
Okay. You're in the right state, though. You're in the right state.
Yeah, that's why. But that's the scary part that I'm in the right state for that. And I'm still saying, hey, you got to do it. Just because I think that Florida right now, I think depth-wise is just question marks everywhere at corner. You've got 2 guys that we know are good. 1 guy we think is going to be really good. And then after that, it's just question marks. Because you got Devin Moore, when healthy, really good.
He's good.
Just never healthy. Deshaun Johnson, when healthy, I think he's really good. And the arrest a few weeks ago seems to be like it was a whole bunch of just I mean, the substance that he had that he was arrested for was creatine. It was just in weird packets. It was just in weird packets, and that was confusing for them. And so it sounds like a lot of not stuff that's going to stick. So that sounds good at least. So I'm not expecting really any repercussions from that. So those 2, good. Cormani McLean should be good. Everybody else, young question marks. I just need people to get in there, and it's iron sharpens iron. You know, you're going to push everybody. And so I think that for me, it's going to be corner, offensive line's another one, of course. And outside of that, honestly, I feel pretty good about most of what Florida's doing with who they're bringing in. And like, obviously the usual, you need to bring in a QB, running back, few receivers, all that stuff. Yeah. Tight end's another spot Florida needs to push on, especially because after losing Tayshaun Gelsey, which ended up seeming like it was more of just a philosophical difference of they were only willing to take him at tight end and he was willing to or wanting to play receiver reportedly, whatever it may be. So I don't necessarily, go, oh yeah, that was a whiff, but I do think that tight end recruiting needs a boot. I don't need stars. I'm a huge Hayden Hansen guy. He's a 3-star. Tony Livingston was a huge project coming out, and those guys are going to get the most snaps. So I just think you need more bodies in that room that are scholarship players.
That's fair. Florida State needs another good tight end in this class. Their offensive line, we've already discussed. Quarterback, a little concern there, which another position shouldn't be hard at Florida State. But right now, that is a major question mark. Maybe they get the kid that's committed to Oklahoma. He's a good player. But defensively, they're kind of in the same boat as Florida. They got a lot of guys, but somebody needs to step to the forefront. Spring didn't go the way it was supposed to. They had some injuries. So I need to see the DB. Chauncey Cannon, the kid that UF is after too, Florida State. But George is involved. Anytime George is involved for a defensive player, it makes you very nervous, and it should. They've also got themselves involved with enough guys that, like, you would think the defensively Florida State would be okay, especially with that staff, Surtain being in the secondary in particular. But I'm a little nervous until I see it again. That's just kind of my take. Before we go to break, one question. Kaden Prothro, it's a kid Florida State had a great chance at. They had the terrible season last year. They're out. I've spoken to people at his program. I was at his high school last week. I was just with him this weekend. What is your take on him? He's arguably the best tight end in the country. Great kid, too. Does Florida have a real shot? What's their take on it?
I think Florida has a genuine shot. I am not sure what it looks like for taking 2 tight ends, how that would matter. And I'm not saying that Florida should prioritize Hees Kent over Kaden Prothro, but I am saying that if you get to a spot where Hees Kent does want to commit to you, I don't think you go, oh, well, we're going to wait on Kaden Prothro, just because then I think you're at a genuine risk of losing Kent and then
take them both.
Yeah, so that's why I'd go, yeah, I'm going to take Kent and Prothro. If you want to come in as well, then come in as well. But I do think that Hees Kent is the more likely option, but that Florida's still genuinely pushing for Kaden Prothro and hopefully can get that one done.
All right. When we come back, we've got some more questions, and we're going to talk a little bit about this upcoming season, how it impacts recruiting. That is next on this crossover of Locked On Seminoles and Locked On Gators. All right, Brandon. We've talked a little bit about Felix Ojo and Kaden Prothro and some of the key guys. Let's talk a little bit about some of the players that you think that Florida is going to lose after this year, and then just kind of break into the season itself. Who is UF going to lose? Because like Darion Williams is a kid that Florida's trying to get for a visit. Kid like that's very versatile, can play on either side of the ball. I just used him as an example in those notes that I sent you. They've got a great wide receiver room, in my opinion, talent-wise. DB room's got a lot of talent. Where are they prioritizing, or are they recruiting a lot of guys as athletes? Like, how do you do that?
I think they're just bringing in a bunch of guys and going, all right, we'll figure out the rest later. They've done a good job of long-term recruiting for a lot of players. You know, they've brought in, I feel like at every position, basically, they bring in a ton of guys where even if it's like, hey, he's not the top player, we can develop him. I think that that's one thing that we'll see a lot of this year as well is Florida, for the entire time Billy Napier's been here, has gone, we're going to recruit you based on your traits and we'll develop the rest. And so I feel like that's kind of how they're going on. They're not huge on, we need this position because we got these guys leaving. They're just going to go get great players. And if they can't figure it out in high school recruiting, then they'll go into the portal and go for immediate needs. Because I do like the way that Florida has gone through this roster building process of if we need if we need a receiver in the portal, we'll go do that. But we're going to do most of our work high school wise and then use the portal as if it's free agency. And I think that's the right way to do things in college football. And so that seems to be how they're going through things. So I think it's not so much about who they might be losing right now to the draft, and it might be more so using high school to replace guys that you might lose to the portal, which would be mostly depth players anyway. I do think this is going to be a Florida Gator retains most of its talent going into 2026, provided that the coaching staff remains intact. I think most of what they're going to do is just retain, use the portal to bring in potential contributors right away for 2026.
Okay, well, with Florida State, I mean, they're going to lose some good players after this year, but like I'm concerned at receiver. They brought in Deuce. He's a good talent, and he's going to be the number one guy for Florida State this season. And I think that, like, if they lose him, can they replace somebody like that immediately without going to the portal? O-line, they brought in 4 portal guys. I mean, they're just – the cycle there is pretty ugly. At some point, you got to take the hit, and you got to play younger guys. And that is my biggest concern. So I don't know how they're going to address that. Maybe a couple portal guys, but their high school recruiting's gotten a little better O-line, thankfully. But still a long way to go to where they need to be. I think it'll be 2027 before they have a high school line that's built through the high school rank. That's unbelievable. Like a full decade where it's been underachieving. It's just unbelievable. But the portal guys they brought in were really, really good. As far as prioritizing just different guys that play different spots, Florida State's doing a little bit of that too. They kind of give a kid an idea where they want to go. Darion Williams is one example. He could play corner, receiver, probably play running back, whatever, but they'll figure that out. My last question specifically for recruiting, we'll just jump into the season. Do you think the Gators are recruiting enough inside the state of Florida?
Yes, I think so. I think that some of it might be a little tough to realistically accomplish. I mean, we both know the effects that Miami can have on some players at this point in the process. We'll see what happens during the season because hopefully they. I was gonna say hopefully they have a Florida State like fall off, but two wins is a bit egregious. I think they can get more than that, but hopefully they have a bit of a disappointing season there. One, because I hate them. Two, because it would make things easier for Florida. But I do think that Florida is recruiting a lot in the state. I do think that they've prioritized it more for 2026 than they even did with 2025 and 2024. I think that they're trying to get back to the whole win the state, only leave the state for some either top guys or bottom of the class guys. Like again, Jameer Perez is an Ohio player. Ideally, he's going to be your bottom of the class unless he's a big riser. Felix Ojo, out of state. And like you had Luke Waffle was on campus. He's an out-of-state guy that I think's really freaking good at playing football. But I do think that Florida, especially right now, as they're going for a lot of DBs and a lot of receivers, that's naturally going to be a lot of Florida kids just because we know how the state produces players at those positions. And then you've got, a Malik Morris from Lakeland is someone that Florida's still very much pursuing. Isaiah Williams was in the class. So I do think Florida's done a much better job this year so far of recruiting in the state than they were doing in 2025 and 2024. Hopefully it leads to some more success actually landing the kids this time and maybe sticking in the class. That'd be fun for the 2026 class to land a kid and have them actually stick.
I think Florida State's also doing a pretty good job of recruiting in state. They just got to win the battles now. But you can't win them if you don't put the effort in early. I have no qualms with what Florida State has done with that. It might be the best thing. They prioritized. Got Chauncey Kennan, among others. He might be a 5-star corner out of Booker High School in Sarasota. That's not a really big problem. My bigger thing in state, can they really pluck a few of the top guys from South Florida? That's a big question. Syracuse has caused problems. You got Miami, obviously. Other schools like Ohio State, Notre Dame are the flies in the ointment as well. We'll see, but I think they've done a good job. Last question for you. How much do you think the season, let's just say the month of September, if Florida lays an egg at Miami or something like that, do you just think it's over with? Or like, because I think Florida State, like if they lay an egg against Alabama at home, it could be a death march. Like if you could be 31-10 at home, and I don't really think they want to fire him, by the way. I'm just going to go ahead and say that because of the contract. My job could be even harder than last year, which is hard to fathom. But I'll give you first shot at that. What do you got?
I think that if you get blown out by either LSU or Miami, it's tough. Luckily, this is the first time in a long time where Florida has a genuinely easy game to open the season because, it's been Miami and Utah the years prior. And so they've had some rough starts to the year. But this time you got Long Island and then you got USF and you go to LSU, which is probably going to be a night game because that's always how LSU does it against Florida, is that for some reason it's always a night game in Baton Rouge. And then you got the Miami game. I think that if you get blown out in either of those games, it's really hard to sell anything, especially Miami, just because that's in-state and you got blown out last time. So you can't get blown out twice by them. But I think, even if you go 1-1 in those games, if it's sure win and close loss, then it's different for recruiting. I mean, we saw this team come back from the brink of death last year. They ended on a great finish to the season. But yeah, I don't know if you can bank on that happening again.
Their schedule is not what I would call friendly. Yeah. Oklahoma or Florida, flip a coin on which one's harder, but they're both just murderers row. For Florida State, I hate that it's this way because when you schedule games like this, I love it. I give Florida State's administration all the credit. You don't have to schedule Nick Saban. And they did.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's here. And if they'd have known, there was zero chance they'd scheduled that game. Let's just call it.
We're not going to see those anymore. Florida already announced, they got LIU this year, next year, and over the next 2 years, they've got Florida Atlantic and then South Alabama. Like they're done with the. Yeah. Let's start with a marquee matchup. They're over that, and most teams I think are now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but anyway, if Florida State doesn't come out guns blazing and at least competitive with Bama, and who knows, I think the ship will sink fast. But if they're competitive or somehow win that game, I think they've got more of a catapult than UF does because they were so down last year. It would just be such a morale booster. It'd be hard to even fathom. The only team they beat last year that was FBS was Cal, and they should have lost that game. That's hard to imagine, but it's still true. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Brandon, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, Locked On Gators. Every single day we're here covering the Florida Gators. So if you want to see a team that can actually reach bowl eligibility in a much, much more difficult and much more prestigious conference with a much more difficult schedule and a much better roster, you can check out Locked On Gators.
All right, man, I get it. You don't like Florida State very much. That's been very clear. You can find Locked On Seminoles wherever you get your podcasts, like on Spotify, on Apple, Sports Spider, and Lord only knows how many other platforms, and on YouTube. We will see you again soon. This has been Locked On Gators and Locked On Seminoles.